Well, a very warm welcome, guys. Hello, it's Cassim, and welcome to another episode of Journal Entries. As usual, I want to start off by thanking you very much for watching. I want to thank you very much for taking the time to listen to some of my ideas, some of my concepts, some of my philosophies, and I hope that something that I share with you today can help you to become a higher, fuller expression of who you're capable of becoming. Okay, so in today's episode, I have 4 different subjects that I want to talk to you about. The first of which is you've already seen in the title of today, which is getting your shit together requires a level of honesty that you cannot even imagine. The second one is marry somebody who's happy. The third is that when you move from one level to another level, whilst you may gain, those on the previous level lose. And the last one that I wanted to share with you today is that your last day will probably be just like any other day. So those are the 4 ideas that I wanted to share with you. As per usual, you guys have heard me share with you the reason why I'm sharing these journal entries, but a brief introduction. The whole reason why I do these journal entries, why I share my notes with you, is I want to encourage you to start your own journaling. I want to encourage and inspire you to start writing down what your idea of success is. I want to encourage you to start writing down how you're feeling. Start writing down how you became successful, insights, ideologies. Get a grasp about what it is that you believe and what you stand for, and then give it as a present to your children, to your next door neighbor, to the next generation. But essentially, you cannot say, I have nothing to give the next generation, because you do. Because you have experience, you have skills, and you have knowledge which you've acquired all along the way. The rule that I apply in my own life is, if you're 2 chapters ahead, go back and help somebody else. Meaning, if you've ever read a book and you've read 2 chapters ahead of the book, that means there is some things that you know that can help people if you went back and told them about it. And so no matter what area of life you've experienced, whether it be you've gone through a divorce, you've had trouble trying to find your perfect partner, you've been sexually abused, or you've gone through domestic abuse, you have had trouble finding out what your destiny is or maintaining your mental health, there is a struggle, right? And there is some insights and some lessons that you've learned. And you are further ahead than other people are in that journey. So you can go back and share some of the things that you have learned. Okay, so let's go into today's journal notes, and let me share with you the first one, which is that you've got to marry somebody who is happy. So I wanted to share this note with you because I've been really thinking about this concept of how many people go into relationships and have this mentality and this ideology that when they get into a relationship, that relationship will eventually make them happy. When they find the one, then everything is going to be sorted out, then everything's going to be okay. But I don't actually just want to leave it there. I want to branch this out to a much bigger prospect and say, how many of us in life look to things that are outside of ourselves to fulfill us, to make us happy, to complete us? I mean, so many of us say, well, okay, when I get the perfect job, then I'll be happy. When I have the perfect income, when I'm making £50,000, everything is going to kind of fit into place. When I have children, then everything is going to be okay. When I get married, it's going to sort out my relationship. But 9 times out of 10, and as you will find out later on when I talk about one of the other points, when I talk about really getting honest with yourself, is if you really get honest with yourself and you start journaling and doing all the things that I've shared with you on many occasions, you will realize that actually success doesn't correlate with emotional peace, right? It is possible for somebody to be successful and be really unhappy. It is possible for somebody to be significant but not have peace. In other words, they are significant in their workplace because people rely on them and they produce value and they employ people, but actually those people are feeling suicidal, those people are feeling depressed, right? Those people have anxiety. So one of the things that I want to share with you, and I've shared with you guys on many occasions, is you have to understand that there are 2 aspects to life. The first aspect to life is what I call the A to Z. It's what's called the science of achievement. In other words, it means that the first aspect of life is saying, Cassim, I want to become an actor. Cassim, I want to become an entrepreneur. Cassim, I want to become an accountant. And the first aspect of life is figuring out how to get what you want. Right? Now, the general rule that I have found about getting what you want is as long as you can find somebody who's got what you want or something similar, if you take the same steps that they took to get it, you will there or thereabouts get the same kind of results, right? Now, it might take you longer. You may have to take a different route. You might have to get more assistance than they did. But essentially, if you follow the same kinds of steps, you will get the same kinds of results. The second aspect of life is what I call the art of living. The art of living is essentially, let me put it like this for you. So, Oprah once said that so much of getting what we want in life is about living in the space of what we don't have. And what Oprah meant by that is, if you actually look at life, most of life, if you look at, let's say you live from 0 to 100 years, most of the time that you're going to spend between 0 and 100 is going to be spent trying to achieve stuff. There's going to be moments which will probably equate to maybe 1%, which is when you've got the job, you're getting married, you are having children, right? The birth of your child is literally there. You've managed to eventually persuade your parents and get them to forgive you, right? But most of the journey is going to be getting there, and how you manage that journey and the experience that you have in that journey is really what makes up most of life. I was saying to somebody, and I think I actually said it in a journal entry last week, where I was saying there are so many people who are saying, well, Cassim, when the virus is over, when Corona, when we come out of the lockdown, then everything is going to be okay. Then my mental health is going to be great. Then my health is going to be great. The truth of the matter is, it makes no difference, right? What difference is it really going to make to your emotional state if we come out of the lockdown, right? Now, obviously, I get it. There is restraints and of course, you're not able to go out as much as you can. But the reality is, if you can't even manage your mental health now and you need to have specific conditions which are outside of your control, right? Because COVID and the whole shutdown, none of us can control, right? So if you have to have all of these things which are outside of yourself in order for you to have peace, in order for you to have fulfillment in your life, you're always going to have a major problem on your hands. And what I have found is that so many of us in life don't understand that in that gap of trying to get what we want, we have to figure out what it is that gives us peace, what it is that gives us fulfillment. If you don't figure that out, you're going to have some massive problems on your hands. In fact, this is part of the reason why I started journal entries in the first place. I started journal entries in the first place because I kept meeting really good guys who basically were on the path to getting what they want, but they were always unhappy, but they were depressed, but they were angry. And I was like, why do people keep doing this? And what I found was the reason why they keep doing that is because they're pursuing things that don't have any meaning to them, that don't have utility to them. People were trying to get married because it's what was expected of them, not what they actually wanted from their life. People became accountants not because that was their destiny, but because that would get them the biggest amount of money, which in turn would allow them to have a car, which in turn would allow them to show off to people, right? So that they can go on all of these lavish holidays. But it wasn't really about fulfilling them. And part of the reason why I started journal entries is that I wanted to inspire you and encourage you to figure out, actually, are the things that you're going after in your life the things that you genuinely want to go after? Do they have any utility to you? Do they mean anything? When you get that sort of 1%, when you get to that 1% where you've spent 99% of the time working to get something and you get it, is it actually going to mean anything to you? And I was thinking about this because, as I say, so many people think when they get into a relationship, then that person is going to fulfill them. But the reality of life is, if you get into a relationship with somebody who is not already happy, who's not already content with who they are, you can never change them. You can never change them. We cannot change people. Only people can change themselves. Right? And let me reverse this and put it into your perspective. If you yourself are not happy with who you are, if you yourself are not fulfilled with who you are not content, you haven't gone and spoken to a counselor, spoken to a therapist, done the journaling, done the emotional reflection, gone back and done the reframing and the deframing, which again, you will know if you've done the work. Unless you've done that work, what will happen is you're going to become a burden to the person who you're going to get into a relationship with, because you're going to carry all of the baggage with you and then you're just going to take them to the new relationship, right? So what I would encourage you to do is change, improve, refine aspects of who you need to do. Do the work that is required so that you can live the most remarkable life which is available to you if you want it, right? You can live the most remarkable life. You can do the most remarkable things. You can become the most remarkable person if you do the work. Most people won't do the work, but if you do the work, all of the abundance and all of the magic of life is available to you. So that's the first thing that I wanted to share with you. The second thing that I wanted to share with you that I was thinking about is when you move from one level to another level, whilst you may gain, the people on the previous level actually lose. So I was thinking about this in terms of success. And I was thinking about this in terms of people who develop their mentality, people who refine their philosophy, people who just change, who transform, who go through a metamorphosis. And I think many of you can relate to this, where there's some things that you used to do 5 years ago and were really, really cool. But when you think about them now, and even when you see people doing them now, you cringe. You think, Jesus Christ, how was I doing that then, right? You used to go every single time you got paid. You used to take all your money and basically you'd blow it within the first 2 weeks. Now you think about yourself and you think, Jesus Christ, like, no, that makes no strategic sense. If I spend more money than I actually earn, that means I'm always going to be negative and never a plus. I can never save for anything, which means if I can't save for anything, it means that I can never really think big. I can never build anything, because in order to build something, you need resources, right? You need planning. You've got to think about stuff. You've got to be strategic about it. But how can I be strategic if every single month I'm always in a negative, I'm always catching up, I'm always running after myself? I was saying to somebody the other day that one of the most depressing things that can happen in life is, I was actually telling him a bit about my story of when I got into debt. And I was saying to him that one of the most depressing times of my life was when I was earning every single month like £4,000, but I was in debt, and I already knew about like three quarters of the way into the month. I already knew that all the money that I was working for was going to go nowhere, because it was already going to debt. It was already, like, I already had things which I was indebted to, that money was going to. So in other words, I was saying to them that why so many people are in situations in their lives where what is the point of putting in work and working hard and putting in effort when all of the effort and all of the energy that you're putting into something doesn't go anywhere? It doesn't mean anything, because imagine going to your job, and every time you go to your job, or you work for the entire month, but the entire month you can never work towards something. All you're ever doing is paying off something. it's depressing, right? It's literally will bring you down. This is how people get into hopelessness. This is how people, because it's like, well, life doesn't really have any meaning. What does it mean? I'm going after stuff and I'm not making progress. I'm not moving forward, right? Tony Robbins talks about the fact that if you want to be happy, find a way to progress in some way. It doesn't matter what way it is, just find a way to move. Progress equals happiness. Movement, some kind of movement, even if it's turtle steps, will already automatically improve your mood. And so one of the things that I wanted to share with you is that when you begin to move up and you begin to refine your philosophy and change aspects of yourself, whether it be your health, whether it be your emotional vitality, whether it be your strategic and the way that you think about life, you have to understand that whilst you're going to be gaining, the people below you are going to be losing. Because inevitably what is going to happen is that we hang around with people who are on the same kind of wavelength as us, right? I was talking to, I think it was my granddad, and granddad was saying to me, we were talking about the fact that, I was talking to my granddad about a program that I was watching called Bridgerton on Netflix. And I was explaining to him that it was a very fascinating program which looked at how arranged marriages and how you had to, in the 1800s, you had to marry into your class. And I said to him, well, that's kind of changed a little bit nowadays. You don't have to marry into your class and there isn't that expectation. And he was saying to me, actually, that's not really true, Cassim, because if you look at today, in today's society, people do genuinely marry into their class. You will find that accountants marry accountants, doctors marry like doctors and lawyers. You will tend to find that people who are like supervisors will marry other supervisors, right? The number one most common place for relationships to instigate is the workplace. And of course, usually people who are in the same workplace are around the same sort of social status. They will believe the same types of things. They will hang around the same types of places. They will have similar work patterns. Do you understand what I'm saying? And so you have to understand that when you move up in life, you're going to start hanging around with people and start thinking and start associating with people who are on another level, which inevitably is going to mean that you're going to leave some people behind. And those people are going to miss out. And the reason those people are going to miss out is because you brought something to their life, whether it be insight, whether it be that you used to be a comparison to them. So they used to look at you and say, I don't want to be like you, right? Let me give you a perfect example of this. So some people are heavy drinkers or heavy gamblers or heavy addicts. And in their friendship groups, they are the individual who the people in the group look at and say, whew, God, thank God I'm not like Cassim, right? They look at you or me and they look at us and say, do you know what? At least I'm not that bad. I know I'm in debt. I know that my finances are not together, but at least I'm not as bad as Cassim. And you see, when you now begin to change your life and you say, actually, I don't want to be out of debt and I'm going to come and work out of this, what begins to happen is you're going to change your thinking, you're going to change your patterns, right? And it's not that you're trying to upset people, and it's not that because you're better than them, but naturally, you're just going to drift apart. And they're going to lose something. And I don't know, but I was just thinking about that. And I just thought it's a little bit sad that actually, whilst many times moving forward and making progress is wonderful for you, there's a lot of people who do actually lose out. There's a lot of people in your life who actually end up being in deficit because of your success. I don't know. It's just something that I was thinking about. The other thing that I was thinking about is the fact that your last day will probably be like just any other day. Now, I wrote down quite a lot of notes for this because this statement really got me thinking. Let me share with you some of the things that I wrote down. So I wrote down that your last day will probably be just like any other day. Life is about the details, and the details are what make life. the key to a spectacular, well-lived life is to know what details matter. I wrote down that much of making a good life is about seeing the world as others see it and knowing their truth and seeing them. I wrote down that when you begin to pay attention, you automatically start asking why. You desire to understand people and you desire to understand people's circumstances. So let me talk a little bit about this because this is an interesting topic. So I was thinking about this topic in relation to really about life and the way in which I lived my life and the way that I've been living my life. Because as I mentioned earlier on, there is a propensity and an assumption for many of us to believe that when we achieve something outwardly, that it is going to fulfill us inwardly. And I have basically found that like 9 times out of 10 doesn't work. We may get instant kind of relief, but in order to have fulfillment, that is a very different thing that we have to go after. And I was thinking that really, as I said earlier on, much of life is about living in the space of what we don't have. It's about much of life is spent in that bridge between where we are and where we actually want to get to. And how we manage that journey and that time between where we are and where we want to get to is really what makes up most of life. And when we begin to understand this, one of the things that you begin to understand is that really what is you're going to be remembered for, and the kind of life that you're going to live is going to be based on the kind of interactions that you can have with other people. And I think when you begin to understand, okay, so what's really going to make up my life is the way in which I'm going to interact with other people, the experiences that I'm going to have with them, the connections that I'm going to have with them, the conversations that I'm going to have with them. I need to figure out a couple of things about people. What do people want? What do people desire? And when you begin to ask some of these questions and you begin to pay attention to other people, you begin to notice that actually you don't know a lot about people as much as what you think you do, right? Because a lot of people observe people do stuff and they think that that person is crazy. They think that that person is mental. They think that that person is fucked up. But the only reason why they believe that is because they don't understand why the person is behaving this way. They don't understand why the person is being like this. And I think part of life, and this is part of life, is really recognizing other people's truth and recognizing context, recognizing what people have experienced and what has led up to where they are today. For this reason, I share with people that one of the highest acts of manhood is to recognize somebody's existence. Recognizing somebody's existence, as far as I'm concerned, is one of the highest acts of humanity, right? To see somebody for who they are, to recognize them and say, I see you, I get you, I understand you, I feel you. No, you're not crazy. I felt like how you feel. And in order to do that, you have to, number two, you have to crack open your heart so that you share something with the person so that in turn, they will give you the context. They will give you their why. And when you begin to share that why, and they begin to share that why, and they begin to share their context, all of a sudden you begin to understand people. You begin to get why people are the way that they are. Let me take this a bit further. Have you ever had somebody in your life where they were constantly angry, constantly pissed off, constantly just dejecting everybody, constantly just like abrasive, really just like obtuse, right, towards everybody? And they'd been like that for like years and years and years. And for years you just said, that's the way they are. And in one day you found out that their parents have been going through a divorce, that their mum had been going through an abusive relationship, that they were abandoned as children, but you didn't know about any of this kind of stuff. And then all of a sudden, when you get that information, alarm bells and connections start going off. Oh, so that's why she doesn't really like men, or that's why she doesn't really like being touched, or that's why she's really cold every single time somebody becomes emotional, or that's why she doesn't believe in marriage. Do you see what I'm saying? All of these connections start going off. And what I would share with you is that I believe that one of the really, really important things about life is to understand that the interactions of every single day is what really is going to make up your life. And when you eventually manage to pass away and you eventually manage to go to heaven, whatever it is that you believe, the reality of life is it's probably going to be like any other day, right? Because look, none of us really know when we're going to go, right? We all know for definite, as far as we can see from the last 4,000 years of recorded history, we ain't gonna outlast this, right? Maybe in the future they're gonna figure out a way to prolong human life for a long time. But at the moment, as far as we know, all of us around between ages 80 and about 110, all of us, at one way or another, we're gonna die, right? We don't know when. It could be even earlier than that, right? Some of us could have another 5 years. Some of us could have another 10 years because we might get run over, because we might be in a car crash, because we might have suffer a heart attack. We don't know. Obviously, I don't want to depress you, but the reality of life is that is how it is. We don't know how long we're going to live. But the day that we actually die is probably going to be just like any other day. If we look at the week leading up to our death, it probably is just a normal day. And so what I would encourage you to think about is try to leave, when you're planning your week and you're thinking about the things that you want to do and the way you want to live your life and how you want to present yourself this week, start thinking about, if this was my last week, how would I want to show up? What are they gonna write in the newspapers about how my week was leading up to my death? What are people gonna say at your eulogy, actually? That's an interesting question. What are people gonna say about you? Oh, I saw him last week and we went for a meal. It was one of the most amazing meals. See, most people, let me take this further. I'm taking too much time, but I want to really drag this out. Some of you guys don't understand that when on the week of your dying, there are going to be people who are going to say at your funeral that they were the last person you saw. The meal that they had with you was the last meal that they had with you. And that is going to leave an impression on them. This is how see, most people think that they're so insignificant. Most people think that they're so they don't matter and their life is so insignificant. But the truth of the matter is, whether you realize it or not, every day you're affecting somebody's life. People are using you as a comparison. I want to be like you. I don't want to be like you. People are looking at you as inspiration and saying, well, look, they overcame that. Well, look, they managed to do that in spite of all of this. Right? Every day people are looking at you, whether you like it or not, and they're using you in some way. And my question to you is, do you realize that, number one? And number two, how are you showing up? I don't know, something for you to think about. So the last thing that I wanted to share with you, which I thought was really important, is getting your shit together requires a level of honesty that you cannot even imagine. There is nothing easy about realizing that you're the one who's been holding you back this entire time. I want to pause there for a second. I just want you to think about that statement, because I was thinking, I don't even know where the statement came from for me to write it. But I just wrote the statement and I thought, boy, wow, Cassim, I don't even know where that came from. But let me just repeat it because it's so significant. Getting your shit together requires a level of honesty that you cannot even imagine. There is nothing easy about realizing that you're the one who's been holding you back this entire time. That is a very powerful statement. So let me go into it briefly. 1. Could it be that the reason why you're not getting some of the things that you want is because of you? 2. Could it be that you've spent all of this time focusing and blaming on everybody and everyone around you and your parents and your mum and your dad and your society and the government, to the degree that if you were to accept that you had something to do with your life, with the way your life has turned out, that you would also realize that you have the power to change it? And if you accept that you have the power to change it, then it means all of this time you have allowed yourself to get into the state that you're in, not because other factors weren't present, but because you decided to focus on the other things instead of yourself. I love what Michael Jackson once said. Michael Jackson said that if you want to change the world, start with the man in the mirror. I love what Jim Rohn said. Jim Rohn said, if you want things to change, you will have to change. He said, if you want things to get better, you will have to get better. Man, I remember those statements. They were impactful for me. You know, on the day that I had the bailiff come to my door, and the bailiff made my mum cry and said to my mum, look, Cassim is in debt and we need to gain access to your home and we need to repossess anything that's his, sell it so that we can settle this debt. When I came home and I saw my mum crying, I said, this can never happen again. And part of the journey that I had to go on to is, Cass, you've allowed this to happen. Like, nobody has forced you not to pay your payday loans. Nobody has forced you to give money to other people. Nobody has forced you to spend all this money on partying and all of these different things. Nobody has forced you to do any of this. In fact, Cassim, you know how stubborn you are. Most people cannot persuade you to do very few people in your life, Cass, can persuade you to do something you don't want to do. Which means, I know that the bailiff have been chasing you. I know that they gave you the money. I know of all the other things. But the reality of life is, Cass, you've had something to do with this. Which means that there is something erroneous. You're making some choices, Cass, that they ain't good. Because if all your choices that you've been making were that fantastic, you wouldn't be in this situation. Would you, Cass? And that was a revelation for me, because what that did is it said, oh, Cass, you're going to have to improve something about you, bro. Like, Cass, I know you're a good guy. I know you're doing your best, blah, blah, blah. But listen. The things that you're doing are not good. They ain't working. Cass, you say you're a good person, but yet you're in debt. But yet you're making your mum cry, right? How does that work? Well, that makes no sense. But you're lying to your mum about the fact that you're in debt when you know you're in debt. How does that work? Well, there isn't a level of character. There is no integrity within you. And I was like, oh my days. I remember going through this with myself. And when this happens, in psychology, this is called cognitive dissonance. Tony Robbins says that the strongest force in the human psyche is the need to stay congruent with how you define yourself. In other words, if you think you're a winner, you'll always behave like a winner. If you think you're an introvert, you will always behave like an introvert. If you think you're confident, you will always behave like confident, right? And when you decide that you are going to behave in a way that is not consistent with how you think you are, it causes this terminology called cognitive dissonance. It's basically a war, right? Imagine there is a war. There is a war inside of you where you're saying, but I want to change. But one side of you is saying, but that's not who we are. Why would we want to change who we are? And this tug of war is so much, and it causes so much anguish. Studies have shown that most people revert back to their normal. Right? This is why it's so difficult for people to quit smoking or gambling, because when you start smoking or drinking, your self-image is that I am a smoker, which is part of the reason why, if you've ever been on any stop smoking courses or anything like that, the first thing that they try to do is to change the way you see smoking. Right? They don't tell you to start cutting down. The first thing they want you to do is to change the way you see smoking. Because people who do not smoke do not see smoking in the same way as people who do smoke. Somebody who doesn't smoke sees smoke as like it's disgusting. Somebody who smokes will see smoking as disgusting, but they're like, yeah, but it's not that disgusting. Do you understand? In other words, what I'm saying is, somebody who smokes is appalled. Their emotionally, their self-image, the way they see themselves is as a smoker. And what I'm going to share with you is that, and it's really the basis of what I'm trying to get to you here is, you've got to start being honest with yourself. I call it, when I coach people, I call it radical truth. Radical truth is where you got to start being brutally honest. Guys, listen to me. Most people live in denial. Most people do not tell the truth, right? To the degree where most people don't even look at the scales. Most people, if you ask most people how much do you weigh, they have no idea. If you ask most people how much money do you have in your bank account, tell me how much money is in your bank account, they have no idea. They couldn't tell you that. Well, I haven't checked, right? If you ask most people how much money they're going to need to save for their pension, they have no clue, right? If you ask most people, what are your goals over the next 5 years? They have no clue. Most people live in denial. We don't want to talk about it. We're wishful people. Most of us close our eyes and we pretend it will work out. Obviously, we know that strategy doesn't work, right? Most of us have employed this strategy, but yet many of us still attempt to go down that route. And when you start getting down the path of accountability, of dealing with a radical truth, of doing what J.K. Rowling once said, which is J.K. Rowling said that there is an expiry date on blaming your parents for steering you in the wrong direction. The moment you're old enough to take the steering wheel, you've got to take over. The moment you start taking accountability for your life and you actually start looking at yourself and saying, do you know what? Maybe there is something about me that is kind of not refined. Maybe I am a bit of a dick to people. Maybe whenever I do get in relationships, I do push people away, right? And that isn't a good thing. And I'm going to need to work on that. Maybe when I'm in work, I am selfish and it is all about me, right? And because I am selfish and it is all about me and I want to become a winner, the issue is I never really look to play as a team. And because I don't look to play as a team, whilst I'm actually successful, I have no friends. I have nobody who would back me. It's interesting. Let me finish off with this. I've been recently making some journal notes about this question. Why does the hero always win? I've been wanting to know this. You know, in every single movie that you watch, the hero always wins. The only movie I've ever watched where the heroes for one moment don't win, well, technically speaking, it didn't win, but the only movie I've ever watched where the villain wins is, of course, the Avengers, right? Infinity War. But obviously, as we all know, he doesn't actually end up winning. But my point being is, every movie that I can think of where there's a hero and a villain, the hero always wins. So I was like, why? Why does a hero always win? Do you know why? One of the reasons I wrote down that if you think about every single movie, the hero always has backup. Every single time. Anytime the hero is down and is about to be defeated, the hero always has backup. The bad guy doesn't have backup. And if he has backup, his backup is never as great as the heroes. Here's what I'm saying to you. If you don't look at some of the errors in your life, look at some of the mistakes that you're making, look at some of the choices that you're making, and realize that actually there is something about you that it's off, right? It needs refinement. It needs touching up. If you don't accept that, and you don't really look at it with radical truth, I'm telling you, it ain't going away.
Closing your eyes is not going to make all of these problems disappear. You've got to face it head on. And this is why I say it takes another level of brutal honesty to genuinely be able to look at yourself and actually see that you are the person who's holding you back. Everything that you want in this world is possible for you. It's there. You know it, right? You've seen other people get it. So clearly you can have it. The problem is, and the issue is, you're going to need to refine certain aspects of you which you're refusing to recognize, which you're refusing to see are faults and errors. But if you will do that, imagine where you could be in 5 years. I don't know. I just wanted to share it with you and something for you to think about. But that brings this week's journal entries to a close. I want to thank you very, very much for watching. I hope something that I shared with you was of value and in some way has helped you maybe get a level of clarity, get a level of insight that you haven't had before. Don't forget to subscribe and join our YouTube channel, Cassim on YouTube. That's where I put most of my content. Yeah, thank you very much for watching, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye for now.